Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Saddleback webinar this week. My name is Liz Mangus, and I'm a literacy specialist with Saddleback Educational Publishing. Welcome to our webinar. We're still on summer break, so let's enjoy it while it lasts. We are here with two great educators to talk about project-based learning today. So as you are signing in and getting settled in, please locate your control bar, which is at the bottom of your web browser window. That is where you will find the chat, the Q&A, and the live transcript option. If you would like to take advantage of subtitles today, please click on live transcript and then select show subtitles. Your questions, either for Saddleback or for our presenters today, should go in the Q&A area, and we will address questions at the end of the webinar. And of course, we have everybody's favorite icon, the chat icon. This is how you are going to engage with us today primarily. So just be sure that when you are chatting, that you select panelists and attendees from the little drop-down menu to ensure that everybody can see what it is you want to share. If you could go ahead and start going to the chat and letting us know where you're joining us from, that would be great. Please be sure to select panelists and attendees. Another thing to do while you're waiting, if you are a fan of Twitter, and I know a lot of you are, here is where you can find us on Twitter. Both of our presenters are on Twitter, and I'm sure would love to hear from you. In Saddleback, we always love to hear from you at Saddleback. So this is where you can find us on Twitter. And while you are taking a look at that, let me go to the chat and see who is here. All right. Hi, Vivian. Hi, Gary. All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Let's bring in our presenters. Keep it going in the chat. I want to know who's here. Let's bring in our presenters. We have Hisham and Stacy. Welcome. How are you both?
We're great.
Good. Looking forward to
it. Thank you so much for being here. This is a topic that we connected about many months ago, and we wanted to talk about project-based learning in general. We wanted to talk about project-based learning with newcomers. So you both are the perfect people to discuss this. So thank you for being here. Let's hop back over to the chat and see what we've got here. We've got Orlando, Florida. We've got Maryland. We've got Dubai.
I'm from Maryland. Hey, Maryland.
Yeah. Bermuda, welcome. Excellent. Love to see all of your, what I assume there are smiling faces behind the chat. So I'm going to say, I love to see all your smiling faces. Kimberly from Texas, thank you. All right. You've got your friends from Newcomer Academy are here. Hi, Diana from Round Rock. That's my friend in Round Rock. Good to see you. Hello from Canada, Bradenton, Florida, Pakistan. Welcome, everybody. Love it. A nice international audience for us today, which is perfect. I say this every week, but we really do appreciate you taking the time to visit with us and learn with us. It means a lot. And just to have this space to be able to connect with you and let you connect with each other as you prepare for the upcoming school year. It's such an honor. So thank you for spending this time with us today. Yeah, I think you're going to get a lot of great resources and tips today. That is for sure. All right, so it is just about time to officially start. Our topic today is project-based learning. Now, project-based learning is obviously a great approach, but it takes some know-how and it takes some learning and studying and cooperation, as we're going to hear, to really make happen and to implement. So joining us today, we have from Newcomer Academy in Jefferson County Public Schools, which is in Kentucky, we have Hisham Roida and we have Stacy Kotkamp. Now these are professional educators, veteran educators. They have launched this PBL initiative on their campus, and they are here to share their wisdom with us. Let me formally introduce you. So Stacy is the librarian at Newcomer Academy, as well as a member of the school's instructional leadership team. In addition to library management, she engages in teacher observation and coaching, designs and manages school-wide reading programs, provides digital support and training to faculty and students, and assists instructional teams with the creation and implementation of project-based learning units. She has been an educator for 22 years and has worked with immigrant families and students in refugee resettlement and public schools for the past 15 years. And with her, of course, is Mr. Hisham Roida. He is a passionate educator, and he has extensive experience working with newcomer teachers and students to provide meaningful learning experiences that tap into students' passions and abilities. Very important for engagement. He is currently the resource teacher and the digital innovation leader for the Newcomer Academy after 15 years as a classroom teacher of English language learners. His instructional leadership has helped many teachers enhance their educational practice by being innovative, creative, and effective in meeting the varied needs of students. The short version of all that, two professional, experienced, passionate educators are joining us today to share with us. Thank you both so much for being here. I'm going to be hanging out here in the background, chatting, compiling questions, helping out with the poll when the poll comes up later on in the session. So thank you again for being here. Welcome. I'm going to let you take it from here.
Thank you so much, Liz. We appreciate that. Very kind introduction. All right, Hisham, how is it looking? Okay?
Not yet.
We don't see your slides yet.
Okay. Go back and try that again.
All right. You're projecting.
Okay.
Yes, you are all set.
Okay, thank you so much, Liz, for that kind introduction. Hisham and I are really excited to talk to everyone today about our experiences with project-based learning. And while we don't consider ourselves, to be the absolute experts in PBL by any means, we have used PBL a lot in our own classroom instruction at Newcomer, and we have guided our entire teaching staff at our school through the process. And today we want to talk about what we have found to be the essential elements of PBL, as well as the essential tools for doing PBL with newcomer ELL students, and really with all students. I think a copy of this presentation will be available for everybody, and it's packed with hyperlinks to the information and tools that we're going to discuss today. And while we wouldn't dream of boring you with discussing everything in this presentation, our aim today is to hit all of the highlights so that you can assess where you are with utilizing PBL. And you can figure out your next steps for increasing your proficiency and comfort level in doing PBL with your students. So let's get started. So in today's session, you might be saying to yourself, my students already love my projects. Why should I do PBL? So we're going to start off with a brief overview of the difference between doing traditional projects versus doing PBL. So you have a clear idea in your mind of exactly what project-based learning entails. Then we're going to take you through some planning and implementation of PBL, and we're going to show you a few examples of how this really happened at Newcomer Academy. And then finally, we're going to go over some tips and strategies for ensuring success for newcomers in particular, and really for all students.
So as the name suggests, really our school is a public school in Jefferson County. It was created back in 2006, and typically our students, they're newly arrival. They spend with us 1 to 2 years maximum before they transition to a comprehensive school. And so that's why the enrollment there has a big fluctuation, because we start small, but and we get students throughout the year, and sometimes we grow a bit to the capacity as well. So when you look at our school, it's packed with diversity, the languages, 40 plus languages every year. So it's a very exciting school to work in. So that's the staff picture and the sample of the students that we have here.
So we serve a lot of refugees and other immigrant groups, and we operate mainly on a cohort model where our middle school students are together by grade level. And then at the high school level, teams of students move through their different content area teachers throughout the day.
So benefits of project-based learning, there are a lot of them in terms of for our students, because it provides an opportunity for them to use all the 4 domains in an authentic situation. And so it helps the teachers streamline their planning, and it is kind of convenient for our students because it's one project, multidisciplined, and covers many standards. And so if they do work, all the teachers are able to streamline their help and their support for our students. Plus, it's a way to be engaged, and it's relevant, it's meaningful, and taps into students' potential.
Also this year at Newcomer, in addition to launching PBL school-wide, we also had an initiative that we wanted to do standards-based grading at our school. You might also know this as competency-based grading. In essence, we wanted to provide our students with opportunities to demonstrate mastery of standards through various modalities. And we wanted them to be able to demonstrate mastery whether they were on campus or not, because our students were mostly off campus this year, as many of your students probably were as well. And PBL provides a great way for students to do this, rather than simply making sure that students are completing homework assignments, taking exams, checking off classwork. PBL lets students show their understanding of content and their ability to perform certain skills through the completion of engaging, authentic tasks. Also, because students are collaborating together and using technology, and they're splitting up the work they need to do to create an authentic product or presentation, you'll find that differentiation is already built in to the PBL process, because students will find opportunities to show off their natural talents and skills, but at the same time, they're encouraged to ask for help and collaborate with others when they encounter obstacles. So now I think we're going to go to the chat, and we are not exactly sure what your level of familiarity is with PBL, but what is a word or phrase that describes how you feel about PBL? Some of you may have already used it for years. You might be new to it. You might be thinking, oh, just another trend, or you may have used it and said, this is really the way that people should be teaching. So just put a word or phrase in the chat that describes how you feel about PBL, and we'll get Hisham to read aloud some of your responses.
Yeah, so we got optimistic, inclusive, awesome, great, deeper learning. I like that phrase a lot. It's very effective in teaching content and language, for sure. David, Diana. Yeah, they create meaningful content. They drive their own learning, engagement, cross-curricular. Karen says that sometimes it's hard to implement, for sure. Yep. Interested, and Zayda said integrated. There were all kinds of phrases to describe the field here.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, guys, for your feedback. So I want you to just think of, take a second, think of a project that you've done with your students. You might have a tried and true favorite that you've used over the years, or think of a project that you're thinking about launching with your students in this upcoming year. Once you have that project in mind, just take a second and look at this T-chart, which will help you to reflect on your project and begin to think about where you are on the PBL spectrum. So I'll give you about 5 seconds to get that project in mind. And with that project in mind, just skim over this T-chart for a moment. So this chart really represents opposite ends of the project spectrum. On the left, we see elements of a traditional project, one that's developed by the teacher. All students make the same product. Only the teacher gets feedback. The product is mostly a judgment of how well students understand content. And the product is usually presented within the class, maybe to a few administrators, but it's really presented with no consideration of an authentic outside of school audience. A good example of a traditional project might be the classic science research paper, where students do a unit on plants. They learn about plant biology. Every student picks a different plant. Maybe they do some research. They write a paper, maybe make a Google slide deck, maybe present their information in front of the class. Teacher gives a grade, finished. Traditional project. Another example of a traditional project with maybe a little flair is really popular right now is the Living Wax Museum, where students in a history class might research historical figures. Everybody picks one. They dress like this historical figure. They give a presentation as this person. Maybe they do this in front of other students or at a little learning expo. They get a grade. It's finished. Okay, these are more traditional products. These projects can be fun and they can be useful, but they lack student voice and choice, and they lack open inquiry, and they lack the opportunity for students to create a product in response to a real world challenge. PBL takes traditional projects and it flips them. It hands them back to the students, and it asks them things like, how can understanding plant biology help us to preserve our local ecology? Or how can we use that knowledge to create a community garden at our school to feed local families? Or maybe looking at famous historical figures. Students can ask, who's missing from history? What have those missing historical figures contributed? Why have they been overlooked? Should we create a database about them? Should we dress up like them and record presentations and send it to a local elementary school so those students can learn about them? So ideas in PBL are endless and they're creative. They involve inquiry and they involve a real world challenge and an authentic product and audience. So let's take a quick poll that I think Liz is going to launch for us.
I am. Let me go ahead and get the poll launched. All right, here we go. So on a scale of 1 to 5, where would you place your project? So Stacy, I'm sorry, I jumped in here. I'll let you.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
So what I like about this one is 1 means, oh yeah, I'm the PBL master. So I'm curious to see where all these lands. I'll leave this open for a little while longer for everybody to have a chance.
Great. So 5 might be, I've heard about PBL. I want to try it. I want to learn more. I'm a newbie. 1 being, I've used it quite a bit. I feel really comfortable with it. Maybe I'm just here looking for some additional tools and resources.
All right, we still got a few more responses coming in. Five more seconds. All right, closing the poll. And here are our results. So it looks like 3 is our highest number on this rating scale. That's kind of where I predicted it would be, but we have a few PBL masters here too, which is awesome.
Wonderful.
All
Very
right.
good. And hopefully there'll be the time at the end where they could even share with us some of their tips. And
Yeah.
guesses would be awesome.
Okay. Are you ready for me to close this visual?
Yep.
All
ready.
right. Let's do that.
So after doing, that poll and reflect.
It kind of broke out.
Stacy, we lost your audio.
Stacy?
We might have lost Stacy. Hold on, let's see. Stacy, come back.
What's that?
Are you there? We lost you for a minute. So
am I back?
You are back. The last thing we heard was, considering the results of the poll, you were just beginning the information on this slide.
Okay, great.
All right.
So I won't read this chart for everyone. It's a little more detailed. It's similar to the last one that we looked at. But what Hisham and I wanted to emphasize is that no matter where you are with your familiarity with PBL and your comfort in using it, we're all on a spectrum. And as educational professionals, we're all constantly reflecting on our practice and refining it. And today our aim is that you can come away with a clear understanding of where you are on the PBL spectrum. And we really want you to walk away with one or two concrete PBL elements that you're ready to implement this year to move you further along the spectrum and feeling more comfortable in using PBL in your classroom. So Hisham is now going to give us a brief interview of what the PBL planning and implementation process looks like, or what it looked like at Newcomer Academy this year. And as he talks, I will open up some samples of the work completed by Newcomer Academy teachers, so you get a sense of what the tools look like in action.
Yeah, so we got to thinking, how can we maximize impact on our students? And so we decided to go the interdisciplinary approach. And so one of the documents that we adapted and shared with the staff and had gave them the opportunity to work asynchronously, where they could record their standards, what kind of project ideas they are excited about, what kind of skills that they want to hit, and what kind of authentic audience or authentic connections that they have, what kind of time frame that they had in mind. This way, it's not forced on teachers. This way, it's not forced on students, because teachers might be reluctant to do it. And so naturally, we wanted the teachers to have natural connection and an organic way to collaborate and create an interdisciplinary project. So we had teams that all the subject areas collaborated. We had some teams where two teachers jumped in because they saw the organic connection there. For example, one social studies teacher and ELA. The ELA standards were all about arguments, and the social studies standards were about inquiry. So they found that very easy to collaborate. So after they fill out all of this asynchronously, they go back in there and chart a path for collaboration.
So I've just opened up a sample here for everyone to see. It's also linked in the presentation. This was our 8th grade team at Newcomer. They did a book study, A Long Walk to Water, and they found a way for some natural collaboration across all content areas. And this is an example of the asynchronous planning that they did beforehand, before they actually met to start planning the PBL unit.
Yeah, so after that meeting comes the planning. And so we thought about what are the best ways or best templates for them to plan their projects. And so we found two that would kind of serve both purpose. One is more detail oriented, like the one you're looking at right now. I like it myself because it hits on all the important aspects of the project, and it kind of doesn't leave much to chance. So if you like to overplan and make sure that you are covering all the students and covering every eventuality, this would be the one for you. And so you're thinking about the inter-event challenging problem, the skills that you want to cover, and then details about how the sequence of the project might go. One of the things that I really like about this document also is that at the end there is a project calendar, and that becomes key because it's so easy to get caught into the planning and into the implementation, and you might overrun the time frames that you have. And so with intentionalities, the teachers are making sure that they have that they're covering everything that they need to cover to ensure mastery of the standards. So if you are, go ahead, Stacey.
I was just going to say, one of the examples that you have access to that we're showing here, this is a high school collaboration between two teachers, social studies and English language arts, studying the civil rights of undocumented citizens.
And as you can see, there's a rule for content as well as the language piece as well. Now, for some teachers, they find it a lot easier if they have everything is on one page. So we can modify this from our deeper learning team at JCPS, Jefferson County Public School. It's called the 4P designs. That's purpose, process, products, and people, which is the audience. And so it basically have the same information, but it is a lot more kind of a summary and a snapshot of what the PBL unit would look like. And so some of the teachers like this idea better because they can see everything in one session. And because of the hyperdoc abilities, it makes it a lot easier as well. Because of the distant learning or hybrid model, or even in classroom, one of the things that we have to think about whenever you're planning a PBL of any kind is that you rely a lot on technology, and you rely on it for organization, collaboration, and presentation. And I thought I'll share some of these. Some of you might be familiar with it, some of you may not, but these are some tools that we have used successfully to keep us organized. For our students, they got used to Google Classroom, so some teachers decided to use that as a host of all the materials and all the things that the student would need. I personally like Wakelet because it has immersive reader for our newcomer students. Some like like Padlet better or HyperDocs. Google Sites also can be used. This way, students know exactly where to go for any assignment that they may have, or any materials that they may need in order to complete their tasks. For collaboration, which is important in a PBL, because of the distance, we used a lot of collaborative docs and collaborative slides. We encourage students to do Google Meets, and we really didn't use Zoom, but it's available there. A lot of our teachers love the Jamboards and Padlets as well. As you can see, because of the every PBL has to have an authentic product that should be presented and showcased and celebrated. Those are some of the tools that we've taught the students to use, and they were able to use it at the end of their PBL unit. So that's why we want to make sure that the learning is organized and accessible, and students know how to use the tool so that they're not penalized for not knowing how to log in or how to use Adobe Spark, or how to use a Flipgrid, those are some things that you have to plan ahead of time and make sure that all students have access to it. Another aspect that's important for a successful PBL is having the ability to collaborate in terms of giving and providing feedback. We created this project tuning protocol. It's a common protocol to use in PBL that should be done at least at the beginning and in the middle. And that helps students think about where they are and what they need to do, but also provides an opportunity for students to amplify the work of the students that allow students to help the other students get to what they need to do, and give them not only feedback, but also a lot of support, peer support as well.
And I want to add that we had our PBL teams actually use the Critical Friends tuning protocol before launching their PBL units, where if you're meeting in a content meeting or an interdisciplinary meeting, they would look for peers from another team. They would present their PBL unit idea, and they would get feedback from teachers elsewhere in the building. And it was a really awesome process. We actually did it online, and we did breakout sessions. And other teachers were able to provide additional resources to teachers for their PBL units. And a lot of times we found that as teachers presented their upcoming PBL unit to other faculty members, they had aha moments. They would notice critical elements that were missing, things that weren't clear, additional mini lessons they needed to create. So it's just a great way to clarify everything and to get great feedback before your team decides to launch a PBL. And the whole process takes like 15 minutes. It's well worth the time.
Yeah, so it's highly recommended not only for students, but also for teachers as well. So this is a kind of, we thought this might be a helpful visual for everybody to see how the PBL unit compares to traditional instruction, whereas there's lecture, there's information, there's activities that students do, then the quiz, and culminating either in a big test or a project of some sort. With the PBL unit, it starts with a project launch. I highly recommend that you think long and hard about how you're launching the project, because that kind of sets the tone and the excitement for the students. And so it's important to think it through, because you want students to be excited and engaged with you throughout the process. Like some of you have said, it's not easy. It takes a few weeks to complete, but and so you want students to have a buy-in for it. After your project launch, of course, that comes with the activities and building the background knowledge. And so when you're building your projects as well, you want to think about benchmarks. These are necessary pieces. There's kind of the building block of the final end product. They're kind of checkpoints to give feedback and students to receive feedback, chances to assess where students are and how you can assist them and how you can build your scaffold for the next time, and clearly identify kind of the outline at the start of the PBL unit and in the middle of the PBL unit. And those are also times where you could do that. You can teach the students to do that critical friends protocol as well. And so, as you can see, the first part is building background. The second part is opportunities for collaboration and modeling and scaffolding. And the last part is preparing for that culminating project. The culminating product and presentation. Very important piece of the PBL also is the showcase of learning at the end, because we want to celebrate the hard work. We want to celebrate how students, how the students completed the project, and for them to see the impact of all the learning that they have done and all their efforts in place.
And I'll add here that Hisham and I, in our experience, found that engaging in backwards planning, which I'm sure many, if not all of you do, is really necessary in knowing where you want your kids to end up. Because all those students, have that freedom in choosing what product they want to create and how they want to solve a challenge that they've discovered, that they're researching. It's a good idea that after the project launch and students, along with you, have created those essential questions for inquiry, it's important at that point that students know where they're going. Who is who is the authentic audience that we're going to present to, because that will make that process of getting there a lot easier. When kids, know who needs this information, who needs this solution, it really helps them to understand where they're going and what sort of product would be effective in getting that information to that authentic audience. So, reflection is also, it's really important throughout the process of PBL, ongoing reflection, but also we encourage you to make time for reflection at the end of PBL while the learning process is still fresh in everyone's minds. And not only time for your students to reflect, but for you to reflect as well on what went well and where some opportunities for growth. There is a link at the bottom of this slide, the reflection process and tools. This links you to a slide deck presentation that we gave to our staff that really talks about the different ways the reflection process can happen. And it also gives you lots of different tools that you can use to gather that information. And we just wanted to take a second to show you the reflection that we did at Newcomer. So after doing PBL for, school-wide at Newcomer this year, Hisham and I used a Google form to facilitate reflection from our teachers, which gave us a great overview of both the challenges and successes with PBL at our school. And it gave us a clear idea of what steps we need to take this year for both staff and students. So you can use a Google form or other digital survey tools, or if it works best for your students to write reflections or to record them on a Flipgrid, there are a variety of ways that you can do that. And I would encourage you to give your students an opportunity for some anonymous reflection, just so that you can make sure you are getting some honest feedback as well. So at Newcomer, we did see some ongoing challenges. I'll just share those with you. Of course, we know that our students have challenges with technology. A lot of newcomers do. Attendance, students were learning from home. So this was expected, but still a challenge and still disappointing in some ways. We also found that, no surprise to you, a lot of our students need explicit instruction in time management. And we have a lot of resources linked into this presentation that are calendars, mini student planners, timelines that students can fill out. But we found that next year our students probably need more explicit instruction in managing their time, as well as increased scaffolding for the reading and writing activities that we were doing with PBL. But we were also thrilled that a lot of the benefits that we were hoping would come along with PBL did happen. Teachers said that students were able to show mastery of many standards across content areas all at the same time. Students love the opportunity to be creative. In our district, students have to present digital portfolios, and our 8th grade students said hands down that the PBL on a long walk to water was their favorite time all year to be in school. They loved it. They loved having creativity, using their own voice and choice to answer relevant, engaging questions. And they really liked having access to all of the teachers working on one project. That was just so much more convenient for students. And it was really streamlined for both teachers and students.
So really, students learn a lot, not just from the product itself, or not just from the resources, but through the whole process. There's a lot of not only content and language, but also soft skills, organizational skills that happens kind of organically and happens without them knowing really. And so for one of the misconceptions as well, a long time ago, was that PBL is just for an extension. It's not something you do with those kids who are struggling, but really PBL is for everyone. And PBL is for newcomer students and English language learners as well. It's a great way for them to show their assets, their linguistics, their linguistic asset, their cultural background, the myriad of experiences that they bring with them. It helps them with their social emotional aspect as well. And so, like we said before, it is really the means by which they acquire the language inadvertently, and they could use the language in all the domains while developing academic language and academic content as well. But how are you going to get there? Of course, you get there through the appropriate challenge and support. It's kind of like with this illustration kind of shows where we need to be in the high challenge, high support area, because otherwise frustration will set in, the progress will plateau without the appropriate kind of support and scaffold that you have to choose. So you really have to be very intentional about the kind of scaffolds that you create for your PBL. Go back one more. Yeah. So like we said before, the benchmark is what the students are going to be doing to demonstrate their progress. And the scaffolds is what you and I would create to help them get there. See that these are what students would need in terms of support. And you have to think about all the details and all the details that needs to be in the PBL unit plan, because you know your students and you know what areas they will struggle with, and you have to anticipate all of that. So when we scaffold the project, first we kind of begin with the end in mind, with the backward planning approach, because you want to think, what do we want students to ultimately know and be able to do? What are the skills that are essential, that they need to have in order to complete the project? And of course, that drives the activities and the scaffolds that you're going to put in for them. And how are we going to implement it during those checkpoints? And those checkpoints and scaffold could be done either individually, could be done in group for only small groups of people, or as a whole class. Again, knowing your student is essential in coming up with the right scaffold for them to be successful. And so when we think about the scaffold, at least with our Newcomer Academy, we kind of said, how can we reduce the barriers? And we thought about that there are three things that needs to happen. First, how can we scaffold the process? How can we scaffold for the content? And how can we scaffold for the language? And we looked at the PBL component in like 4 main parts: the launch event, the entry event, the driving question. How are we going to build the background knowledge? How are we going to build knowledge to answer those driving questions? How can we develop the end product to answer the driving question? And when do we present? And so for all of that, you kind of have to build some of the scaffolds there to support their success throughout those 4 parts. So for example, in the project process, coming up with a work plan, like Stacy said, is important for our students to get them organized and get them in a flow, in a workflow to complete the PBL in time, providing sentence frames to help them formulate or support the driving questions, building the background in terms of what like helping them by kind of creating the daily objectives that are accessible linguistically for your students, modeling, co-creating rubrics, or creating rubrics that are easy to understand and easy to follow in a student-friendly language. So there's no, so they're not lost along the process of creating their final product. And of course, thinking about what kind of support they would need and how much they need to practice their presentation. So again, you have to think about all of that. The list on the right side in that table is not exhaustive. Those are just some of the examples. Of course, content is content. It should be at your thinking. And so again, at each part of the PBL process, there are some strategies that you could use, like creating a KWL chart. It's something that people use all the time. It can be very helpful for our students and very helpful for you to see where the necessary scaffolds you're going to create and for what students. Thinking about the content that they're going to use in order to answer the driving questions by providing level text, by choosing website that have maybe immersive reader, translator, things like that. Plenty of clear modeling, and a lot of metacognition can be useful for our students. Providing a graphic organizer for them to organize their thoughts and organize their final details of their presentation. Lots of visual aids and multimedia to enhance it. And those are some of the things that you want to make sure that you put in place so that you have a good product at the end. Last but not least, of course, is the language development. And so how does language development happen throughout the PBL unit? Thinking about the content related vocabulary, the academic language, the academic vocabulary they need, plenty of opportunities to collaborate so that you're doing listening, speaking, reading and writing, of course, providing a lot of sentence frames, sentence starters, showing exemplars of work samples, either presentation or pieces of writing as well, and going lots intentionally teaching language models and how to present, how to project the voice. And of course, because of the presentation, there's going to be a lot of feedback, of course, a lot of questioning. And so you want to provide question frames to help everyone be able to interact and ask questions and provide feedback.
So you might be asking yourself, where can I find a lot of those tools that Hisham was just talking about when scaffolding for students? There are a lot of hyperlinks on this slide. Every one of those color highlighted sections is a hyperlink to a lot of the tools that he just discussed. In the options column, you'll find a link to a list of dozens of product creation ideas and good examples of these products so that your students will have a guide as they're kind of choosing what product they want to create and what is an exemplar of that product. In the rubrics column, you'll find examples of single point rubrics created by Hisham and I, and single point rubrics can be used as benchmarks or check-ins during the PBL process, as well as they can be used as a whole unit single point rubric for the authentic product or presentation. And you'll see examples of both of those when you go to that link. And if you aren't familiar with single point rubrics, I do encourage you to study those and to try them in your classroom. They're simple and straightforward. I think a lot of times teachers go down a rabbit hole of overthinking rubrics and different levels of student performance. The single point rubric really simplifies it and allows you to give explicit individual feedback to your students. In the mini lessons column, you'll find a link to a planning tool where you can identify what students need. Like Hisham said, you're anticipating the needs of your ELLs and your struggling readers and quite frankly, all of your students. So that's a planning template where you can identify what those needs are and you can start to sketch out mini lessons and workshops in order to help students overcome those challenges. And at the bottom in that little research skills link, that's a link to a slide deck that I made for our newcomer students on how to do research. And it includes screencastify recordings of myself using a database, rewriting information I found in my own words, and creating simple citations. Research skills, I think, are a big struggle for ELLs. So that is a presentation that you can make a copy of. You can use the parts that you want. You can post it in your own classrooms. And that way, kids aren't always waiting on you to help them with research and lead them to the next step. It's sort of a standalone tool that they can go to help themselves do research. The visual link has a link to many resources provided by PBL Works. And there you can find a lot of the calendars, mini student planners, blank timelines, and more support that your students might need as far as time management goes and product planning and visualization. And finally, in the language column, we wanted to put in a link to the updated WIDA standards for ELL instruction through content. And they have updated their standards to also reflect teaching of everyday language for collaboration and social interaction in the classroom. So we think that you would find that very helpful in actually modeling for students what good collaboration looks like in the English language. And here are our two go-to resources. A lot of what we use comes from PBL Works. We consider them to be the absolute experts on PBL. And we often take some of their tools and modify them, for our purposes at our school. And we also provided here a Hacking PBL Launchpad. And I can't even begin to describe to you how many resources are there. It's an absolute ton of stuff. So if you are a little bit more advanced in using PBL, you might find some new wonderful resources there. So please take a look at those as you're getting ready to plan PBL for this year. And this is our contact information. We would love to hear from you. We would love to answer any questions that you have, either on Twitter or by email. And we are also happy to get online with anybody and actually demonstrate some tools that we have used to answer questions, or to just help you with anything that you need with PBL or working with newcomers in general. Thanks so much for being here, and thank you for your time today.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, hang tight because we have a couple of questions. Just to address a couple of things in the chat, the certificate should be in the resource link that I just dropped there in the chat. And we'll also be sending out an email tomorrow as well that will have that information, the handouts and the certificate. So before we address the questions, let's go back here as usual and let everybody know who is coming up next week, because we always want people to join us every week. We love to have your participation. So next week we are hosting Coffee with Katie and Richard. So if you know Dr. McKnight and Dr. Cash, they typically have their webinar called Coffee with Katie and Richard, and they're just going to do it at our house next week. So their topic is setting up an emotionally secure and literacy grounded classroom. When we think about our students coming back to school full time post-pandemic, we know that we're guessing we should anticipate some struggles. So how do we make sure that emotionally they are secure and comfortable and ready to learn? And then how do we also integrate those best practices in literacy as well? So please do join us. You can register on our website, and you'll also receive an email prompting you to register. All right, let's jump into the questions right after I remind you about Saddleback Digital. If you are interested in having Saddleback high-low books on a digital platform, we now have that available. You can check out our YouTube channel for an on-demand webinar giving all the information you could possibly need in a brief little demo. So check that out, or just shoot me an email. I'm happy to meet with anybody to show you what that is and what it looks like. All right, thank you everybody for your time today. Let's get to, Diana Allen, who's my friend in Round Rock. She's like, this is one of the most masterful presentations she's attended in a long time. So it really, I mean, just full of great information, very relevant. So I can't thank you enough, but we do have some questions. Let me stay focused. Okay. So do you do this from day one? Is that the plan, to do it from day one? Or is there sort of a lead-in time to get students acclimated a little bit? Or do we kind of integrate that all together?
I'll just briefly say from my own personal experience, I think creating community in the classroom is the first step. That was always my personal experience. And with newcomers in particular, they have a lot of routines to learn. The everyday routines of the classroom. We spend a lot of time first learning a lot of language for agreeing and disagreeing and norms of sharing and discussion. And I think that really engaging, really exciting PBL sometimes involves maybe sensitive or difficult topics in our modern world. And you need to create that community first, in my opinion, if you want students to be comfortable in engaging in things that, they need a safe space is the bottom line. They need a safe space to engage in, to express what they're thinking, to engage in things that could be a bit sensitive or controversial.
Thank you.
Yeah, you also
Hisham, what do you think?
yeah, I couldn't agree more. They have to have that safe environment where they can express their ideas. But also you want to kind of front load a lot of the technology pieces as well. You want to ensure that everybody is kind of equal footing and they're able to use those tools. And so yeah, that takes quite a bit, but once you establish that, you'll be good to go.
Thank you so much. I see a couple of people in the chat saying they're having some difficulty with the handout link. We will definitely be sending that in an email later today. Probably most likely it'll come tomorrow. And then from that point, if you still can't open it, you can reach out to me. I'll put my email address right here and I will make sure to get that to you because you need to have it. It's got all the resources in there from today's presentation. So there you go. Okay. Next question is, it's around assessments. So if I'm a teacher who's thinking about jumping into PBL, and I saw your slide with the sort of the flow and the benchmarks, is there a way to take the benchmarks and convert it in a sense to a more traditional like progress monitoring tool? So if I'm a teacher and I'm teaching in a very sort of traditional environment where every so many weeks I'm supposed to give some sort of quick check on student progress in a bubble format, how do I keep everybody happy? How do I do PBL but still not get in trouble when I'm supposed to be doing, fill in the bubble things? This may be too big of a question to answer, I realize, but I just wanted to kind of get your thoughts on how the information you can glean from these benchmarks can satisfy some of the more bureaucratic things that we as teachers need to address in terms of notating student progress towards standards.
Well, that for us, I mean, there's opportunities for you to do small quizzes, not so much on that benchmark, but on that benchmark, that's where you use your single point rubrics, and you can convert that if you wish to kind of a percentage or whatever, so that you can report grading. But ideally, what you want is combine that with standard-based grading, and the two kind of go hand in hand, and yeah, using single point rubric, providing feedback, because that gives them opportunity to catch up throughout that process. It's not just one and done like in tests and quizzes, but they're checking their mastery of the standards as they go.
And we've got a lot of our teachers using the backwards planning process. When you're identifying all of those content standards and skills that you are expecting students to demonstrate mastery of over the course of 2 weeks or 6 weeks or whatever, those single point rubric benchmark check-ins, that's where those things are checked on. And when students are demonstrating mastery once a week, every 2 weeks, every 3, that's where those progress grades can come in. And I know every district is different, but with us, a lot of our grades are finalized, at different times of the year. So students have opportunities to go back and do work. And it's such a great tool. Standards-based grading is just so wonderful in that when students don't demonstrate mastery of a standard, your basic message to students is not, you have a 0, so you're done. It's, you're going to keep going until you demonstrate mastery. So there's not that sense of failure, that sense of I can't catch up, I'm behind everyone. You are just saying you're not there yet. That's all you're saying to kids. And
that's crucial
really
for newcomers and English language learners as well. And for those that really want a numerical kind of an example, what we have done is that with standard we kind of assign out of 4, and so that's how. So if they're not yet, they're a 1. As they demonstrate, it goes 2 and 3 and 4. And that could be, I don't know what kind of management system the person that asked the question used, but that could be converted into percentages, and that could satisfy a lot of people.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Thought it was a great kind of a complicated question because there's so much variability among across districts in terms of expectations for that kind of thing. But it's good to hear your your answer and your perspective on that. Okay, last question is just upon reflecting of how this went last year in particular, how did it work virtually? Did you feel like you got some traction with it? What were the challenges there, and what would you do differently? I think a lot of people have the virtual in the back of their mind right now, even though we're planning on going back for the most across a lot of different districts. I think everybody wants to be prepared, so they just are interested in your experience with the virtual implementation of this.
Yeah, I mean, we bit off a lot last year at Newcomer between adopting standards-based grading and PBL at the same time. They work nicely together, but it was a lot of training and support on our part to really help teachers through the process of acclimating to it. But things that we had, all of the challenges, some of them are similar to what newcomers have in the building anyway. They have technology challenges at school as well as at home. I would say almost being stuck at home accelerated technology acquisition for a lot of our students and teachers.
Yeah.
You still had those kids who sort of disappeared on you that you really struggled to meet. And you know, when you launch PBL, when you try it for the first time, I think you have to give yourself grace. You have to remind yourself that you and your students are learning it together at the same time, and you're not going to do everything perfectly, and neither are they. And so I think that our teachers going into next year, they already know things that they want to front load technology better. We got that through the reflection, and using that. What you'll find in the resources, it's really hybrid focused. There's a lot you can do in the classroom, but there's a lot of tech in there where kids, you know, one of Hisham's big things is kids need to be learning outside of school too. You know, we have a lot of teenagers at Newcomer that work, and traditional school and traditional school time doesn't always work for them. They want to do their work on Saturday. They want to do it after they get off of a shift at a restaurant. So I think you should always be planning for kids to be learning in whatever modality at whatever time works for them. So Hisham, maybe you want to talk a little bit about the hyperdocs, like how we use that and what worked and kind of.
Yeah, that's what we did. We did a kind of a weekly hyperdoc as well, where all the work is in there, and so students are able to complete it at any time. We gave them extended time to finish it as well. But I would argue, like to kind of go back to your question, is that with the virtual world, this is way helpful in the virtual world because it has streamlined the assessments and streamlined the work that the students have to do. And because we looked at it from an interdisciplinary model, it lessened the load on the students without lessening the rigor or anything like that. And so all the teachers are able to connect with the students, and that's one of the question. I mean, that's one of the complaint that teachers had before. It was like, oh, they do the work for math, but they don't have time to connect with me for social studies. And so, like, when you combine disciplines, you are able to help and maximize the help. And so, even if you're a math teacher, you are able to help with the same PBL that they're doing for both of you and the other disciplines as well. So it's a very helpful tool.
Great. Great answers, great information, great presentation, and well-timed, because I think a lot of people are thinking about this as we head into the new school year. So it is just about 4 o'clock Eastern time, so we finished right on the dot. Let's go ahead and just remind everybody of where they can find Saddleback online. Our website is sdlback.com. We're on whatever your favorite social media platform is. We are there. Find us, follow us, say hello. We're always happy to hear from you. And enjoy the rest of your summer vacation. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you, Stacy. Thank you, Hisham, for sharing this. I mean, this is such a huge shift in thinking and working with students. And so we appreciate you sharing your experiences. I think it's going to help a lot of teachers. Gary says this was excellent. I agree. So thank you so very much. Thank you everybody for joining us, and we'll see you next week. Take care.
Thank you.